Hello, my name is Sumit Malkani and I'm a trainer and a public speaker by profession. And today I'm going to discuss some very useful, simple, yet very effective tips on public speaking. Before we move on, I'd just like to pose a small question to you. What do you think is the biggest fear in a human being's life? Okay? Is it fear of death? Is it fear of snake bite? Or is it fear of losing someone you love? Well, it's not. The biggest fear of an average human being is to speak in public, impromptu, extempore, or maybe minutes, well prepared. Okay? So what we're going to do is today is visit 10 essential techniques or tips on public speaking. Okay, in the previous slide, I just asked you a question and I also gave you the answer. So the biggest fear for an average human being is speaking in public. Now, let's try and visit the first technique, which says, how do I overcome fear of public speaking? First, and the most important thing is you acknowledge and accept the fact that every public speaker is nervous to begin with. Be it a politician, be it a movie actor, or be it a person, maybe it's your boss, maybe the chairman of a company. Each person, when we take up the stage, we have certain amount of nervousness. It's all about how do you handle the nervousness. The first thing and the important thing is give yourself some time to adjust. Okay? If you observe people, if you observe these public speakers very closely, these politicians when they take up the stage for the election campaign, when you have these movie actors who take up the stage to thank millions of the fans and people who have supported and win the award, they never ever start immediately. They give themselves vital few seconds, which is very important for us to overcome the nervousness. Next, keep your nerves, okay? And it's also absolutely fine that you commit some mistakes. Allow yourself to commit some mistakes, but the difference between a great public speaker and a normal and an average speaker is that great public speakers know how to camouflage or hide their mistakes. The moment you make your mistakes obvious, that's where the audience know. Okay? So the key thing is you are allowed to make mistakes, but be smart enough to camouflage them. Very important thing next is to smile. When you smile, it automatically eases your nerves. Move around the stage and use the stage properly. Unless there's a compulsion of being static, okay, that's the way I have it now, okay. So what you can do is use the stage. So when you move maybe back and forth, maybe you move left and right, what it does is it helps your, you kind of gain, you kind of gain some psychological advantage over your audience, because when you move forward and backward, left or right, what happens is the eye contact, people are constantly watching you when you're talking. So you move left, you move right, the eye contact follows you. So that's where you start to have that psychological advantage over the audience. Next, and the most important thing to overcome fear is believe that you're the best. Unless you believe you're the best, nobody else will. And since you're the best person to do the job, that's the reason you're there on the stage, or else you wouldn't be there. Okay? And overcoming stage fear, 80% of this fear you can easily overcome if you follow the next tip of public speaking, that is to plan and to prepare. The moment you plan and you prepare, you're much more equipped to handle questions. Probably if your audience have any questions, you're well prepared mentally and with the topic to answer all those questions. So first and foremost is research the topic well. Once you've researched the topic well, it is also important that you're convinced about the topic or the subject you're going to speak on. Unless you're convinced, you cannot convince your audience. Plan what you are going to speak. So that is also very much dependent on the next point which I want to share with you is try and get some background about your audience. Okay, it is very important that you understand the kind of maybe the age, the demographic, maybe the cultural background your audience are from. So basically you plan what you want to speak depending on the information you have about the audience. When you have these two things with you, you can easily plan as how are you going to customize your speech or your presentation which suits the audience the best. Okay, and most importantly, know what is the objective of your speech or your presentation. Okay, understand that what is that one key point, or what are those couple of points, or maybe 2 or 3 points which you want to put across to your audience as the key message from your presentation. Okay, moving on further, tip number 3 is familiarize yourself with the venue. Well, this is very important. If at all, if it's possible, visit the venue a day in advance. Okay, and see what is the kind of arrangement you have in terms of the audiovisual equipment, the size of the classroom or the conference room. Also, if possible, try and see what are the other aids which are available to you to enhance your presentation maybe. Well, if it's asking too much of visiting the venue well in advance, with the help of internet today, you can at least research something about the venue. So that when you reach the venue, you're not a complete novice, or you're not, and maybe you're ready for surprises as well. The key point is you're ready for it. And the most important thing is visualize yourself in that room, in the venue, delivering the presentation. Visualize yourself moving across the room. Visualize yourself being praised by the audience. Visualize yourself being applauded for a very good presentation which you've made. So this is the key. Okay. In short, basically, the step number, or the tip number 4 is stage setting, which is where you've kind of almost started with your presentation, or you're almost ready to deliver a presentation. Once you've done that, try and get to know your audience. Try and understand as much as you can know about your audience in the very first few vital minutes. I'm sure a lot of you have, and the most of you must have, undergone some sort of trainings earlier. Maybe when you have the orientation on the very first day in your university or in your maybe high school, when you have the dean coming, and that's the very first interaction which he has with all of you. The first thing probably he does is, he wants you to introduce yourself. So that's the reason he wants you to introduce yourself. Is one obvious reason is to know your name and the stream which you have enrolled in. Secondly, it's very important for that person to understand something about you. So when you speak about yourself, you're essentially giving out information. And that information is very important for that public speaker to move on with the presentation. How we do it is we share a light moment. In our training vocabulary, we call it breaking the ice, or it's called an icebreaker. So that's where you share a light moment. You talk about something about yourself. All the audience talk about something about themselves, and that's where you know something about the audience. Very important is to have an eye contact with the audience. When you're moving back and forth, when you're moving left, right, it's important that you have sufficient eye contact with all your audience. What this essentially again does is it shows that you respect the participants, you are giving them undivided attention, and in turn you ensure that you have the same from them. Once you know your participants, once you know your audience, you are in a position to use humor very wisely. Okay, it is very important that you use humor, and you use it at the right time and in the correct way and the correct manner. Okay, and the one thing that sets apart a great public speaker, or maybe a good public speaker, or maybe a person who is an average speaker, is that a great public speaker is always aware of his or her own body language, as well as they're aware of the body language displayed by the audience. They know when to stop, they know when to pause. A great public speaker would always want to know that where is that the audience would want to change maybe the tempo of the speech. So it's only possible when you are aware and alert of the body language of your audience. Moving further, it's always said that you should groom well if you need to have a good impression on people around you and on your audience. But the key thing to keep in mind is dress to kill, but not your speech. Never ever wear clothes which are very tight, because that would again restrict your hand movements and your gestures. A formal attire or a professional attire, depending on the occasion, of course, and it also depends on the kind of organizational culture which you have. Watch, if you're wearing a watch, ensure that your watch is clinging onto your wrist. When I say clinging, it should be absolutely fitting to your wrist. Maybe a size larger, a little loose is fine, but never ever wear a watch which is probably, when you keep your hands down, it clings onto your, maybe comes onto your palm. Wear mild fragrance, especially where the venue is a compact room, there are not too many audience. If you wear strong fragrance, it might create some kind of discomfort for your audience. Avoid loud accessories for the simple reason it's not considered professional. Wear a subtle makeup. This is essentially for the women, that as the corporate culture, we are supposed to wear a very subtle makeup. But this again can vary maybe from culture to culture, maybe a country to country. It's often said that use your voice to be heard. V stands for volume. It's very important that the kind of volume which you maintain for your audience. If you're too soft, if your volume is too low, you are kind of perceived as a person who is maybe very submissive, who is not very assertive. So by all means, it can happen that your audience have the better of you. If at all, on the other hand, if you have a person who's talking probably very loudly, you might be perceived as a person who is very aggressive and maybe rude at times. So it's very important that you maintain a very positive and a very effective tone and volume, which comes across as not aggressive, not very submissive, but a person who's very assertive. Output, it refers to the pace of voice, pace of the words which you speak per minute. Ideally, it's said that when you speak, 70 words to 80 words per minute is the ideal rate of speech. Anything below that, you might be perceived as a person who's boring, unenthusiastic, and dull. Anything more than that, you might be perceived as a person who is in a hurry. He wants to finish off things very quickly, and most importantly, you would not be understood. When I say intonation, intonation means the way you modulate your voice. During a speech or during a presentation, there will be certain times when you take your pitch a little higher, maybe you take your pitch a little lower, depending on what you're trying to convey to your audience. So that's voice modulation. Clarity means, as speakers, when you start off with a particular sentence, the beginning of the sentence, we tend to be very clear, the words are very clearly understood. But as we move on and we are trying to finish off the sentence, we tend to maybe fade in those certain words. So it is very important when you start with the sentence and the end of the sentence, the clarity has to maintain throughout. Emphasis, one of the most important things in your voice is emphasizing or stressing on certain keywords which would relate to certain meaning which you want to convey across to your audience. Let me give an example here. There's a sentence which reads, I did not say she beat up her husband. Okay? Now let's try and emphasize on the words which I have underlined over here. Okay, so here the emphasis is on I. Now let me read this for you, emphasizing on the letter I. I did not say that she beat up her husband. When I emphasize on I, what is the meaning which you derive out of this? It says that I did not say that she beat up her husband. Probably somebody else said it. It's not me who said it. Okay? Let's take the next example where I emphasize on the word she. I did not say she beat up her husband. Now what does that mean? That I did not say that she beat up her husband. It's maybe somebody else who beat up her husband, but it's not her. Let's take the third example now, where I'm going to stress upon the word her. I did not say she beat up her husband. Now what is the meaning that you derive? The meaning here is that I did not say she beat up her husband. Maybe she's beaten up somebody else's husband. Okay? So, three different words emphasized. In the same sentence, you have three different meanings which your audience will take away. Moving further, the tip number 9 is use of cue cards. Now, it's very important that probably if your presentation or your speech is maybe an hour long or maybe a couple of hours or the entire day, it's not going to be possible for you to memorize the entire speech. What you can do is have cue cards for references and place them at a place where it's easily accessible and you can refer them. Okay, so it could be the dais which you're using. It could be a table which is next to you, maybe 3 or 4 feet away from you. And today in the electronic age, you have the PowerPoint ready with you. So if it's fine, if you don't carry your cue cards, you can have your laptop to refer. And ideally, in case if you're using the cue cards, the size of the cue cards should not be more than 5 by 7. Okay, so 5 by 7 is ideally when you fold your A4 size paper into a half. That's where you get maybe 5 by 7. Coming to the last tip or the technique in public speaking, and the most important of all, is self-belief. Believe in yourself, believe in what you say, and also believe in what you do. Because if you don't believe in yourself, there is no reason for other people to believe you. So believe in yourself for your audience to believe you. Okay, before I sign off, let's have a quick refresher or the recap of the 10 points which we've discussed. 1. Overcoming stage fear. 2nd is to plan and prepare. 3rd is to familiarize yourself with the venue. 4th, stage setting. 5th is know your audience. 6th is body language. 7th is grooming. Use of your voice, that's the 8th point. Using cue cards, the 9th point. And finally, the 10th point is self-belief. You have to believe in yourself. Okay, with that note, I would like to sign off. I want to thank each one of you to be so humble, be so kind to attend this session and spend your time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.